Hello, hope all is well. So today I thought we'd look at something that might come in handy for you, and that's setting up, say, an amp sim within your DAW to get, say, a wider stereo sound, and also some small tricks here with a multiband compressor. So the amp sim we're going to be using today is the freshly released Amped Volcano, which I think you can probably guess what it's based on, but it's essentially like a Soldano amp. So we have two Soldano amps within this amp sim. We have the Volcano Overdrive, which is here, and we have the three different settings of the actual amp itself, so a clean, crunch, and the overdrive, along with the Asteroid, which is the Soldano Astro 20, and we have the 4 channels that are on that amp. Now I thought it'd be interesting to look at a way of setting up your DAW and the plugin you're using to get like a wider stereo sound. And the thing with the amp plugin, as we have different amps that are within the same plugin, we can then use them hard panned left and right in separate tracks to get a wider kind of stereo sound. That's a lot more fun to play, I guess, than just using, say, one instance of the amp plugin on a mono track. But first of all, I'm going to look at adding some multiband compression to sort of tame the lower mids. And that's that kind of like lower mid build-up that you hear sometimes that can, depending on the guitar you're using, mean that you get a less tighter sound. So I'll give a quick example of the same tone before and after adding a multiband compressor, so you get some idea of what we're talking about. What we're doing here is that we're using a compressor to target the area between 100 Hertz and 300 Hertz to sort of compress that. So when you get those kind of boomy low mids that are coming up because you're chugging away, you can control that, and in the process you're going to get a clearer and tighter kind of gain sound. The plugin we're using for this, it's the awesome TDR Nova. It's a free plugin. I'll put the link down in the description below. You can also use this to sculpt as an EQ. So I could, for example, add a further low cut here and a high cut should I want to. But we're just going to be looking at the multiband compressor side of this plugin. So we're going to be using the, I guess it's the Andy Sneap kind of trick, or it's the settings that are used for that. So we're going to do this by adding a compressor to this first band of EQ. I opened up the plugin again to give you some idea of how to do this from scratch. We'll hit in up here just so that we have the signal so we can see what's going on. So we can see what's going on there. Now we'll select the first band of EQ. We'll hit threshold to activate the actual compressor on that band of EQ, and we'll set the threshold anywhere between maybe 5 and 8 depending on how much reduction that you want. And the important thing here is the attack and release times. So we'll have a 10 millisecond attack, 25 millisecond release, and then for the actual band that we're going to be compressing, I'd suggest setting this to around 125 and then playing with the Q setting to make it relatively sharp so that we see that it's dipping around that kind of area. You can, of course, raise the frequency or lower kind of depending on your tuning and the sort of build-up that you're getting around that. As we have the frequency analyzer, we can really see what's kind of going on. In my case, I'll set it for about 130, Q up a bit, and then the threshold at 6. If you want more compression, you can actually also up the ratio and play around with the threshold and the ratio to see what kind of values that you want. But you can keep the ratio at, say, 2:1 at the start and then play around with the threshold to see how much actual compression that you want on that part of the signal. So I quite like how that sounds, and now we can look at making things a lot wider by using 2 instances of the plugin hard panned left and right. Now, the really easy way of doing this is once you've set up one track to have the amp sim plugin, in this case Amped Volcano, along with say the multiband EQ, is just to duplicate that track. And here in Reaper it's made the exact duplicate of the track, and it will also arm it for recording. So now if I'm playing, it will go through both tracks. So they're both centered and it's quite loud, but if I pan them both to be hard left, hard right, and we'll see how that sounds. So that's already quite cool, but they're basically running the same amp, if that makes sense. So the way to make things sound wider is that we're going to select, let's say, our right side. So this is the Amped Volcano that's using the right-hand side. So they're both using the same cab and they're both using the same amp. However, what we can do here is that we can set the right-hand side amp to be different. The only thing to bear in mind is I would suggest, would be to use the same cabs, as using different cabs, you can run into some phasing issues, which will mean that it will sound out of phase, and you'll notice that quite quickly. So in this case, I'll go for the Asteroid Purple on the right-hand side, and the cab is the same, and we'll see how that sounds. So a nice way of thinking about it, I think, is basically the differences between the left and the right-hand side. The more differences there are, the wider or more different it's going to sound, within reason, of course, because depending on how you set things up, you might run into some phase issues. And the way to sort of go against that is to kind of make sure you're using the same cab. And then something like, say, Amped Volcano in this case, makes it really easy because it's all within the same ecosystem, if that makes sense. So you have access to the same cabs and the same presets and things like that. So what we're going to do in this next example is we're going to go for the same preset on both sides and then just change the amp on one of the sides to get a different kind of flavor and a wide kind of sound. So on the left-hand side, we're going to go for the, this time at Gents preset on the Volcano Overdrive. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to go to that same preset, this time at Gents, to make sure that we're getting the same cab that's loaded. And then with the amp, we're going to change that to, let's go for Asteroid Red actually, and then maybe with a drive pedal on there as well to see how all that sounds. So that's a pretty cool combo already. You might have noticed that, one of the sides is peaking a bit higher. So what you can do is to sort of pull back on the output of one of the sides to kind of make it more in check so the levels are about right. But this should give you some idea of the sort of tones that you can get by doing something like this. This also works, of course, with some more lower gain tones. I've just been looking at sort of high gain tones. So you can do the same kind of combinations as well with two amps, hard pan left and right, and then maybe add some additional effects to that. So yeah, what I did there was relatively straightforward. So what we have on our left side is the Volcano in the crunch mode, and I've got a delay active and a reverb, as well as a compressor. The thing with the reverb is to keep the mix relatively low and keep the tone high to keep things nice and bright, not too much on the time. And so with the delay, I kind of messed around a bit to try and get this kind of dotted eighth feel on one side, so on the left-hand side, and then a more standard quarter note feel on the other. So you get this kind of ping pong style delay with different offsets, so you get this nice kind of vibe with that. And by doing this, you also increase the sense of width because of that difference again that we're getting between the left and the right hand side. So I hope that was useful. I thought it'd be cool to kind of show some tricks, I guess, of using your DAW and the AmpSim plugin of your choice to get this kind of wider sound, as it's a really cool way of getting like more mileage out of whatever you're using, especially if like you're using amp plugins just to play along to stuff or in isolation. It can be a really cool way of getting like a bigger, wider and a fatter sound in the process. In any case, thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. Take care.